Hey, Bill.
Hey, Bill.
Welcome to episode number two. Number two. So, what are we talking about today, sir?
I think I'd like to talk about DMing, not what rules are good, what rules. Although we can mention those in passing, but I think more style, DM style.
Okay.
The way I like to DM style, DM games, and the way you like to DM games. And for me, because we're all, as the name says, old. We've been doing this a long time, and I'm sure the same as with you. My style and the manner and way I DM has changed drastically in the last 40 years, right? And I think that's some value in that. Just talking styles.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I agree with you. My style has changed not only because it's grown. Obviously, I've learned a lot. I think it's important in this discussion to talk about the change in Dungeons and Dragons over the last 3 years. So, really, what we're talking about, in case it's a mystery, is the come onto the stage of 5th edition and, more importantly, Critical Role, which
And
really
shows like that, and just the explosion.
absolutely, whether it's Brennan Lee and his D&D games that he was running live,
College Humor, right?
College Humor and Beyond, and of course Critical Role, which really brought it center stage and into the public eye a lot.
Yeah,
and gave access to it to a whole lot of people, which had the effect of exploding it. But at the same time, we're dealing with professional voice actors and professional actors and very experienced dungeon masters. And you learn something from them. At the same time, it's a terrible yardstick. I've seen several videos Matt has done, and even he'll say it's a terrible yardstick to compare yourself to.
Yeah.
Not only because of what they do, but also just the sheer amount of time he has to prepare those games. Right? It's very time consuming to prepare.
And just anything. Just imagine the difference between if we put a camera down and tried to film a police procedural versus the shows of police. The quality you can't compare, right?
No,
because they've got a lot of people behind the scenes. They're doing things like adjusting lighting and sound and things like that we don't have.
Right.
But it's the same way. I think it's a lot of things, and I think it's important. If you think about what D&D was like when we were teenagers, right? And I think the big thing is that it's still, when you say D&D, people think nerds, but they don't think of it in a mean way now. Back in the day, this is the stuff you get pushed and locked in your own locker, and you get wedgies from and stuff. There was especially that a very big trope, right, is that the jocks would beat up the nerds. It's a trope because it happened. Now, it's not so simple as the movies make it, but I do think the way people view people that play Dungeons and Dragons has changed as well, and that's something that will affect your style and play.
Sure, I agree. Also, I think it's important to know that as the game has changed, nowadays, there was a time where if you told someone you play Dungeons and Dragons, the first question they'd ask you is,
what is Dungeons and Dragons?
What's that? Yeah, right. Nowadays, they'll know what it is, right? Yep. Between a movie and the publication of Critical Role and the sheer mass number of people who are playing now.
Yeah.
It's all over in the high schools, and
it's not
it's a thing now, right? There's a lot of people playing it,
and especially as you become it was, you got treated as a nerd in high school, but it was worse in many ways in the 20s because you meet somebody new, you're like, especially you're dating somebody, and you talk about nasty, you're hesitant to mention that you play D&D because you don't want to say, oh crap, nerd, and flee. It's just like saying you like go skiing. It's just a thing. It's not it's not so demonized now.
Sure, there's certainly places where now, like my work environment, without getting specific about it, there was still a thing. It was still a nerd thing but more and more people started coming into my work environment who played, who knew what it was, who were actually running games, which when I started working there was absolutely not the case, right? No one, if I mentioned it, it was Nerd City. You have different job experience than I do for sure.
Right.
But but yeah, so I think that's an important place to start from, is that over these last few years it has changed because, well, we now have a yardstick to measure ourselves against. If you think about it, when we're DMing, we were in such our own bubble, because unless you knew other players or you ran into other groups playing, like at a convention or something, you had no idea what other people were doing in terms of running a game, because you couldn't see it at all.
That's actually a very good point about the conventions, because you're right. And I know that when I was DMing, when I was 18, whatever, I thought I was the greatest DM. I thought I was king of the hill. And I think because I had no measuring stick, as you said.
Right.
But the first time I went to a convention, I haven't been to a ton of Dungeons and Dragons conventions. I've been to other conventions, but I did go to a couple. There was one that was held near my town, another town. It's so small. I think there was 400 people at the convention, but it was fun because I got to see other people, other styles. We ran a game there, and my buddy ended up running it because the guy was supposed to run didn't show, but I played with a bunch of people I've never met before, and I never haven't seen since. And it was a very interesting experience. It exposed me to say, oh, maybe I'm not the greatest, but I'm not terrible, but I'm not. But there's other things, there's other ways. So it opened up to stop looking at my narrow way of thinking about DMing.
That's, we've had different experiences for sure. I've played D&D at a couple of conventions. I did not DM. I played at a fairly large convention. This was 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Because I haven't been to a lot of conventions since. I'll be interested to see how it is at the upcoming convention that I'm going to. We'll see how the gaming is there, right? But I have to say, the DM I ran into, when I did a side-by-side comparison, I go, wow, I'm actually a better DM than I thought. But that's because the reality here is it doesn't matter. The yardstick you measure yourself against as a dungeon master is not the Matt Mercers or the professionals, and that's something new.
Yeah.
They pay people to DM these things.
I mean, that's insane.
That's nuts. I couldn't even. I have yet. I've been meaning to. And we will make it a topic of conversation, but one of the things I really want to do is attend a professional game.
Right.
I want to see what $25 or $50 buys me in terms of quality. I want to see that yardstick, right? I want to see, what does it look like. I personally have no interest in trying that because I don't think I'd be good enough to make people pay for me.
I disagree.
But I'm saying, right, that's just how I personally feel, especially nowadays. But the truth is, I think when you're talking about DM styles, and correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't matter how different our styles are.
Right.
The reality is, as a dungeon master, you have to measure yourself against your audience. Who are you DMing for? Because nothing will change a game more than the type of people you're DMing with. And honestly, it's only recently that I've started playing with different people and can really see a stark comparison with the kind of players you're playing with. So you DM to your players. That's the bottom line. You have to be the dungeon master your players need you to be. And that's hard if you've never met them, for sure.
If you think about bad players, right? And if you had experience with them, right? I think, like I've run games with bad players. I don't care who the professional is, he's going to struggle. Because if your players, the players have to contribute, and they have to contribute. They can't just, I'm going to do this because my character wants to do it. They have to put more into it. They have to be invested in what you're doing. Now, the DM's job is to try to create a world where they can be invested in it, right? But there are those, and I've played with a bunch of them. Currently playing with a couple now that. They don't really do anything, and they're kind of waiting to be entertained as opposed to engaging, and so what I'm saying is, if you look at somebody like Matt Mercer, he's not just got random people that are playing.
No.
They are all, first of all, they all want to. They're all professional voice actors, but also professional actors in general. They know how to give and take in the episodes that they do. They know how to bring life into their character. They know how to see what the DM is going and support that in their actions too.
You know what I find, and I've said this a lot, when I started watching Critical Role, the biggest thing that group has going for it, the thing that makes them successful as a group is not the voice acting. It's not any of that. What really, really makes them successful is that they are friends. They not only support their dungeon master, and this is so critical as a player or as a DM to talk to your players about. The players support each other.
Yeah, that
is
important.
That's critical, and they also trust each other, and that is also huge. If you're going to get into role playing, you need to have a certain level of trust. So if my character pulls a knife on your character, right? It should not be it should be a role play part of the story, not a game ending move, right? A TPK should never be brought on, and it has, in my experience for sure, be brought on by the party versus the party.
Yeah, that's worse. And I will I'll put in I will just say, so I'm also a player. I played in a lot of your games, and I have changed as a player because, and I was for a very long time. I was the what I call it, a chaos monkey. Is that the way I described it?
Yes. Is this the time where I remind you that in the very, very first game that you joined for my game, you killed one of the main characters?
Okay, hang on. You give me a lot. That's not a chaos monkey move.
No.
What happened? He set himself up.
He did.
He did things. The party was trying to figure out what to do with him. I just said, hey, why don't we just do a trial by combat? And it turns out he was a shitty fighter, and I kicked his ass.
Yeah. It didn't help that you ripped off his house and wore them as a
But that's not
as a token.
That was
mind you, these people did not know who Bill was yet, so that was a great way to introduce yourself.
It did put me on the map.
But yes, you are a chaos monkey.
I was, but I've gotten better over it. I started realizing that I was being more a hindrance to the DM than not, and I started creating like our current game. We have a lot of players that assume and just leave me to lead, which is a problem because I don't always want to lead. So I've been actively pushing people. First, I push them to try to engage, but then I also, like, when they make suggestions, I just go with it. I don't care how bad the suggestion is.
Yeah,
I support them. You want to do that? We're going to do that. And that's what I'm actively trying to do as a player. So I'm trying to find ways to help people support them. Not, as a GM, as somebody who DMs too, I have the tendency to want to help them run their characters sometimes. So I try not to. I don't tell them I just make sure that they know that they have options. And when they say, I want to do some spell that makes no sense in this situation, I'm like, okay, here's what you need to know about the spell. I do that logic versus oh no, this is a better spell. I'm like, you'll figure it out because it'll go disastrous and you'll remember it. But let me just so you understand what this spell is when it does.
I think as we're talking about that brings me to a point regarding when you're trying to DM certain players, right? I think there's a misnomer out there that, hey, I've been playing D&D for 30 years, therefore I'm an experienced player, I'm an experienced role player. The reality is your players are going to role play to their comfort level, and it's important that you help them be comfortable in that spot. The reality is most of the players we play with aren't comfortable in a leading environment, right? They don't want to lead. Now, it could be for a number of reasons. It could be because they're simply not comfortable in that role. They don't want to take the time or put themselves out. It could also be because maybe they have a fear of being ridiculed or laughed at. And that's what we're talking about, friendship and trust. Because I can tell you right now, with the personalities that we play with, there are people who are more comfortable leading or would like to lead, but have been over the years ridiculed for their fashion,
Yeah.
and maybe that too needs to change, right? So when we're talking about trust among players, that's an important thing, right? We need to make sure that your players who want to lead are comfortable, and that those that don't want to lead don't get pushed into it, right? And that's really hard if you don't have anyone who wants to lead.
Yeah. Well, we have like we have one friend who probably isn't he he has a high level job. He controls a lot of employees. He's leading 50, 60 hours a week. He's actually so
Right.
he is not interested in leading in the game.
Right.
He doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to have all the. He doesn't want to feel responsible on that level. He just wants to play his character. But he's also pretty good at being a supportive character. I would say that's the thing about him that's interesting. So he tries to support whoever's going to lead.
I agree.
And so you have that. So you got to kind of know your players. I guess is really what
That's really the idea. I mean, we're kind of getting away
long-winded. Yeah,
we're getting away from DMing and talking more about players.
Yeah.
And let me, and let me put a fine point on that. And that could be a whole nother discussion. I think it's important for players to know, to have some idea of how they want to play this game, not just the dungeon master. It's well and good. The dungeon master needs, and we're going to talk about what we think a dungeon master needs to do and what their role is. But don't mistake the fact that players also have a role in this game and how to build this story, regardless of what kind of game you're running, whether it's a hack and slash kind of game, or if it's silly, or if it's super serious and emotional, whatever your group is into, whether it's horror or however it is that you want to theme your game. Everybody has a role to play, and if not everyone's on the same page, it's going to be a difficult game for the DM to run, and it's going to be a hard game for the players to play. Right. And then we won't even talk about trying to schedule D&D. Everybody who watches this ever will know exactly what I'm talking about.
D&D knows the schedule problem.
Yeah,
it is what it is. It's
pretty much after high school. There's no chance. I mean, it's so hard.
It's so hard.
Jobs.
We're hoping now that our friends are starting to retire. Hopefully they'll open up, but it hasn't yet.
That is very correct.
Half of us are retired, and we still hasn't got that much better. But we're hoping.
But some people are busy. I mean, just straight up busy.
Family.
It's also fascinating, and we can definitely talk about this as we're going to jump into DMing here in a second, I hope. We play together in almost everything we're currently playing. So
the one game I had fell apart. This is another thing that's just a constant.
And so
it was an online game, so that was half the problem.
The interesting thing is, and we can talk about DMing virtual versus DMing not virtual, because that's a thing now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that too. But
let's just start with. I think let's start this way. Let's talk about our styles.
Mm-hmm.
We'll describe our styles a little bit.
Okay.
Bounce it back and forth.
Sure.
And then we can say what I consider my pro. And you can see what you consider pro, and then I can talk about what I consider my con. You consider your con.
Okay.
Something like that. We'll just kind of toss it around like that.
All right. So you go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. So my style, there's three things I like in my games. The first is I like a long played story. Even if it's a one shot, as weird as that sounds, is I'd like to have, there's something going on here. You got a piece of it here, you got a piece of it there, and I want to leave breadcrumbs basically for them to go, oh, and this is leading to a bigger thing, and I like that style, and I like creating it, and I like that you're gonna, even if it's not a world-ending thing, it doesn't have to be that. Just it's your world, a big thing. It's this big thing that you're building up to, and then there's this climactic thing, whether it's a battle or confrontation or something like that. But that's something. So there's this big surge. That's sort of that first part of the style. Like, secondly, I have a kind of a rule that I think I want to play a game where we're playing with heroes, true heroes. I don't want to play the every guy. It doesn't mean you can't have every guy's true hero, but I don't want. I like to give powerful weapons. I like to make sure that they're powerful because what I'm going to throw them is goddamn powerful. It's dangerous, and if they're just average, they're probably going to get their head chopped off. That's another thing. The third thing I would say is I think my game is perfect is if the only time the players have full health points is what they call a true safe zone, a big city that they're truly safe in. Outside of it, they're always at least dinged up, and they're always a little nervous, and they're always afraid of. And by the way, afraid of any damn thing. I really like it when they stop their care. I don't know about this. I know it's just a little kitten, but there's something sinister here. That's what I want them to do. I want them to be afraid to walk out their front door. Right? So that's kind of it.
Well, having been a player in your game, I'd say you meet that objective. I think one of the interesting things, and we're gonna talk about you for a bit before we shift over to me. One of the things I like about your particular style is, as a player, by the time you get a long rest or even a short rest, it feels like a gift from God. You feel relieved to get a moment to breathe, because one of the things he loves to do is put pressure, constant pressure on the players. And even if you're super powerful, resource management is always a thing to consider, because he's going to push you to your out of resources and then push you a little bit more. And you typically, this is when you're out in the wild. It's not so bad when you're in a city if you're lucky enough to be in one, but trying to get to one might be the challenge. You never know what to expect from anything. If the little kitten peeks up its head, then you should assume, it's safer to assume, that this thing is going to grow 10 times larger with big nasty teeth, or just have big nasty teeth, or it's going to blink at you and cast a fireball. You don't know what it's going to do, but you're going to be on edge. Even if you approach it and you're going to try to parlay with it, you better be. Being arrogant in your world is usually a way to get yourself killed pretty fast. And I like that. I like the risk of it. It makes it interesting, and it makes the reward a little juicier, especially since you do big rewards. And you also do something which I've tried to copy because I really like it, is the concept of magic items that level with you. And it's really nice. And so for me, I appreciate that particular style, right? It does make running a character, sometimes it can be very frustrating because you really want that rest, or you're really like out of those resources that you need, like spells or whatever have you. But it does make it a fascinating experience as a player. So yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, me. Now me. Okay. So the thing about my style is this has definitely changed over the years, and this is partially because I've changed. I've gotten older. I don't feel or think the same way about things. But for me, I also like to create a living world, a place where things happen. And I am not a world creator. I use other people's work for this. I don't have the time, I don't have the inclination, and I don't have what I think are the skills to create a world, right? My hat goes off to people who are world creators. I like to take what's out there and modify it for my needs if I'm going to do anything at all. And I started playing in the world of Greyhawk, and then I advanced to Harn, which we'll talk about, and then now in Forgotten Realms, right? And I like but I want the world to feel alive. I want the players who meet an NPC and then go away for a while and come back. The NPC is either there or has changed, or some things have changed, or they have people in the world they can connect to, events they can connect to. And I also, if I'm going to run different games in the same world space, I like them to overlap a little bit, right? I like, when your new character runs into something that maybe your old character was responsible for, you feel a little better about that, right? You say, oh, wow, this was the work of my other character. And there's always these little bits of stuff that play into it. Beyond that, I used to like to run a pretty serious role-playing heavy game, right? I wanted the players to get into their characters and feel. The problem with that is it can be dangerous at times. It can be risky because you are dealing with real emotions at that point. So you really have to have some trust in the people you play with. But again, as I said, it's playing to your audience. I had some very, very serious role players at the time when I started doing that, and it worked very well. These days, I've adjusted my style, and I'm not entirely sure I have found a stylistic groove I'm good with right now, which is maybe why I'm taking a bit of a break for me. I've certainly improved my DMing capabilities, how I actually manage the game. So when we're talking about DM style, there's style, kind of how you want the game to be.
Right.
And then there is managing the game itself, how you're handling the rules, how you're handling the pacing, how you're handling. And these are talents that come with experience. And these are probably where most DMs really suffer, is struggling to get that rhythm where you're trying to keep pace, you're trying to keep everyone engaged, you're trying to keep the story moving forward, despite the fact that the players may have no interest in moving forward. But, sometimes they want to sit in and role play all night. You have to kind of find that groove with your players for sure. But for me, it's hard to place that. I pull from so many different sources. I pull from literature, I pull from movies, I bring ideas into my gaming that I picked up along the way. I read a lot. So some of my games I have literally put together from books I've read. I've pulled bits and pieces. And look, they may be a modern book that I bring to a medieval world. So it's hard for me. My style just is all over the place sometimes. It's hard for me to, it's more about making the game fun to be in while you're in it and just adjusting however I need to adjust that. But I do like characters that have some power. It's easier to manage that sometimes.
Yeah, I guess for what I'd say about your style is you excel on breathing life into things and people. So when you go to a tavern, regardless if it's just some random tavern, that bartender quickly comes into existence, and you recognize it as a person. It's not just some random guy who's taking 10 gold for a night's stay or whatever. You breathe a lot of personality, a lot of interest. That inn is interesting too. You describe it in depth, and you make sure people understand, even if things that they'll never actually interact with, but you understand the clientele that's at that particular inn or whatnot. So you breathe a lot of life into those things, and you can project your voice and you do some voices. I know you're a voice actor. I always said you probably should try, but you can. You have some that you keep at ready, with some that are more authoritative, some are more sheepish personality. So you really bring life into whether it's a main NPC or there's just some random schmuck. You do that really well. You breathe life into, like, I'm more hesitant on modules, and the reason I hesitate is I want to create things, and I'm like, I don't want to use something that somebody else has created. Although in truth, I probably should, because it's created a really good thing. You take it, especially a drab one. Just a couple of the ones that you've run, where if I read it, I didn't think it was that special, but when we were in it, came out really good. You breathed life into, and maybe you didn't breathe the exact idea that the author of that had, but that's okay, because it was really great and fun. And I do think the problem that you run into with, as you say, the role playing heavy at the beginning when you're younger to now, is it's the players, and I think the combination of our current players and, like we were saying earlier, the availability. It is hard when you play so infrequently, and you maybe go every 2 weeks, and then it might be 3 months. It's hard to put a lot of effort into creating with that kind of constraint. So I think that's where you're at. But I do really enjoy your games. I don't think I've ever had a bad game. I think the bad games that we've had I think it's just when people don't participate and give up, or and things like that. When the game goes bad, it's usually the group as a whole have an issue, whether it's just they're tired or whatnot.
I will say that over the years, and you can tell me your experience with this as a DM, but first of all, I want to say I do not run one shots. I don't like them. I don't mind playing in them, but I have no capability of putting them together. I want a long story. I want a big story. Now, lately, the games I've been running are somewhat linear in the sense that, working off of a module, and so it's got this path, and the players are following this path. And that has not worked out as well as I would like to have worked out. Recently, I started a game which was more open world, where I was going to piece things together, because really what I wanted the players to accomplish for themselves is whatever it is they wanted to accomplish for themselves. Do they want power? Do they want wealth? I like it when I can invest the character into the world itself. Dungeons and Dragons, 5th and 5.5, added this thing called bastions, which is kind of interesting. And I didn't realize this until just recently, actually, when someone brought it up to me. And that's neat because it allows you to invest in the world, create a base of operations for yourself, create kind of this home. And once you have that, once you have a base, then like just in any kind of strategic game, they have to defend it. And you have NPCs of your own that you care about or are trying to protect. And, it just brings this whole dimension to it. And whether you're a landed person, and I've definitely run those, and some of the most successful games have really been when the characters have some place in the world that they have world influence from and can divest themselves into what's happening in the world. And I think those have been some of the most successful games. And I'm kind of sorry I haven't been there lately, but my last game fell apart. Why? Scheduling.
Yep. Ultimately, it was. I thought we were doing pretty good with that game too when we could play, because some of the players that I would say are usually the more reserved, they stepped up a little. They're more. I guess what I'd say, they were more invested in the characters. So it's a shame that one fell apart.
I'm not calling it dead just yet. By the way, I'm hopeful. There was some scheduling things, some work things that happened. Well, I'm gonna bring it back. I have not forgotten the style.
It's a crying shame because we hardly played the game, and I think I single-handedly created one of my favorite characters that I may have played, and I was just starting to get in the groove.
Oh, it was a great character. It was a great start, actually. So, I mentioned before, and again, I really want to delve into some of the mechanics of DMing here a little bit. But, when I say I borrow, beg, and steal, I do. And that game, I absolutely stole, right? There was, hands down, I put them through what is essentially the original Night of the Living Dead, right? Yeah. And I even pulled up the house they were in, the set, everything I could get online about the show. I followed to a certain degree. That I changed some things for sure.
Yeah, because it's
changed the pattern to it a little bit, and understand that I was dealing with players who were younger, right? One of them, my child. And so I knew that even my older players didn't necessarily, because the movie's not necessarily in their genre.
I picked up on it pretty good.
You did, but I kind of figured you might, right?
Yeah.
But my other player, who's our age, didn't grasp it so fast because it's not in their genre, right?
Yeah.
And it's
a
pretty old movie, too.
Well, the good thing about it, from my perspective, is it had been a long time since I remember parts of it, but I don't remember in depth. So certain aspects were still surprising me. So it still worked. It was because I hadn't seen it probably 30 years.
Yes, and I had watched it right before starting the game just to get the flow of it.
No, it was a good.
And sometimes it accidentally flowed that. Anyway, so it is absolutely okay as a dungeon master. Do not feel pressure to feel like you have to create everything on your own. It's hard now with the modules because a lot of them are coming out aren't modules so much as they're full campaigns. But there's a lot of things which have bits and pieces. There's a lot of league play out there now, which has little bits, which takes these big dramatic modules and breaks them up into bits and pieces. Grab what you want that fits for your space. Find a place to play in, a world or whatever, whether you create it yourself, if that's your comfort, or you find something with a crap load of material behind it, like Forgotten Realms, or you want to play in Mercer's World, which there's also a lot of stuff on.
Yeah.
Whatever your comfort level is, pick your space, know it, and play in the space you're comfortable with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, by the way, we talk D&D because it's the most popular, and it's one we've done the most. But we played a lot of games. In fact, I liked a lot of times to use weird rule. Sometimes I would do, especially if I have a weird game. Sometimes I'll use weird rules. We ran I ran a game with some friends back in before I moved out here, way back, and I used a Marvel game that they had at the time, which is super simplistic, and it was
I'm pretty sure it was Champions, by the way.
Whatever it was called, I can't remember now. I haven't played it
Yeah.
since the 80s. I haven't played it since the 80s, so the game got long. But I used to use it as when I wanted to do a weird, and it was the one I was running at that time took place in the 1890s. It was more of a horror style thing that I was doing. And I used that because it was very basic. I didn't need super complicated rules because a lot of it was role playing, and you react one way, you're going to get benefits. React a different way, you get. So it's that kind of logic. So it could be any rule system. We just use D&D, A, because that's the most familiar, and B, is most likely something other people have heard of. But
again, when you're talking about, and I don't want to get too far into systems here, because there's definitely a lot of people who will talk about the strengths and weaknesses of a different system. Again, it's where your players are, right? We use Dungeons and Dragons because we've been using it really since advanced D&D as far as a group goes, right? I mean,
Yep.
I looked at the basic rules when I started, but truly I started DMing under AD&D with the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, and so forth. But that was really what we call almost first edition, and here we are in fifth edition now. And I think I skipped fourth entirely, and maybe most of third. But
I don't even remember exactly.
But I think we well, that's because we transitioned out. But there's Pathfinder out there, which is very popular. There's a little system called Harnmaster, which we played a lot of, but we bought it for the world, not the system,
great.
which is still, despite the fact that Columbia Games created it, and strangely enough, the how do I say this? The community has kept that going, as I have found out on Facebook recently. They're still chugging along, doing stuff for it. There's still stuff being put out for it. It's fantastic for what it is.
It is a fantastic world they created.
And honestly, I was driven to that particular world because, again, it's about your players, right? My players at the time were, for the most part, medieval historical experts, interested. They were studying it in college, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you're playing with a group of people who are into medieval history, you know, what really was happening at the time, talking about things like, you know, when plate armor came into real existence, when you're talking about putting Dungeons and Dragons into a real historical background, it forces you to kind of change how you approach the game. And it did for me. And that was the whole reason we shifted to that, is because it had a more realistic background. You know, I remember we had a game once that was interrupted because, you know, we had to figure out what a door hinge was in the time period, right? People want to take the hinge off the door or whatever, right? This is how they want to get through the locked door, or however they want to take the hinge out. And so we suddenly had to figure out what hinges were like in medieval style. And we went through a whole thing. We learned what it was. The funny thing is, in my trip to Europe several years back, we went to a castle in Wales, in Cardiff, actually. And sure enough, there they were, right there. I could see them. There's my 13th century or 14th century door hinge.
That's funny.
Exactly how I played it. But I have a question for you. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit.
Yeah.
When you started DMing, what was the first really big challenge that you came up with? I mean, that you faced as a DM that you had to get over to keep really. What was the first big challenge? Was it a player? Was it the rules? What was the first real challenge you faced?
Okay, I think I always rules challenge me because I'm one of those guys that's not patient enough to read too much. I kind of skim, and I think I got the idea of something, and then it turns out, all right, I misread it. Rules have always been a challenge, and I'm also, have this there. Like I just don't really need a lot of rules. Although I don't want to go ruleless, we need them for certain things. So rules tend to challenge me. Like I get irritated by some of like when especially in the game where we start arguing whether or not this spell does this spell does that. It's like, come on, we understand. What are we trying to? I don't like rules lawyers or people that try to min maxers. I don't like that style. So that's the first thing. The other thing that I sometimes I still find challenging is to really breathe in the personality of certain type of characters, especially if I have to do it off the fly. Because otherwise, if I have to do it off the fly, like the difference between you is that random innkeeper. A lot of times, the random innkeeper is exactly the same for every goddamn town you go to. Because I just say, oh, I need an innkeeper. Okay, and I do that. So those are the two things I think are the biggest: is the rules and just kind of that breathe in life. Now I will say, I like to create. I don't always like to create, but a lot of times I like to create the world the game's going to play in. And the world of play might be very small, might be a town, an area like that. It's not necessarily the whole world. So I will find sometimes I'll get stuck on whether or not this river should be flowing this way. I want it to flow this way. How can I make it flow this way? And so sometimes I say, well, it flows this way. If they ask about it, I'll tell them to F off. But so sometimes I add that too. That's the kind of stuff I kind of run into. And it is tough when I have somebody like you as a player, because you have experienced DM. And sometimes you'll want to correct me on my rules ruling. And sometimes I have to say, that's the way this game's going. Deal with it.
Yeah, it's hard. As a DM when you're playing, especially if you're really familiar with the rules. And, that comes with experience too. Believe me, I am not the kind of person who picks up the player's handbook and reads it cover to cover. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've never read a D&D book cover to cover, any of them, ever. Even modules, I typically don't read cover to cover, even though you're supposed to, and twice in some cases.
Yeah.
Of course, they've gotten much bigger now. I just don't. But over time, sure, I become very familiar with the rules, and I do take note of changes because now we have 5.5 or whatever the hell they're calling the new thing, and also the funny thing is, a few years ago, Baldur's Gate 3 came out, which was a game based on 5th edition. So here we have a video game for the first time using rules from D&D, which I thought as a DM was great, because here's my players might actually learn all these new spells. They could actually learn some of these options that they have from the game itself, and some of the tricks and some of the cool things to do.
You know what the best part is? None of our players used.
No, and by the way, some of our players have played this game endlessly.
Yeah.
And still don't put some things together.
Like, hey, wait.
Fireball is not the only 3rd level spell, folks. Let's say that.
Well, and like there's one player we're both thinking of in particular. That's
and you know who you are.
That's that fallback moves is they throw a fireball.
Yeah.
But there's some fabulous spells out there that are kind of interesting, and you should learn from.
Yes.
Right. You should learn playing. That's the beauty of playing BG3. I loved it was, and why I still play it, even though I've completed it a bunch of times. I'll still play it just to see those spells in practice. And sometimes I try weird levelings, which is a problem because now we have a new system, so it doesn't level the same. You're like, God damn it. But
things are different for sure. I don't create classes often. I will allow players to vary themselves a little bit, but I'm very cognizant of balance. And it's funny because, we learn, right, from other DMs. And I have to say, one of my greatest teachers lately has been my own child, who DMs one of the games we're in.
Right.
And his style is different.
Yeah.
and the way he approaches DMing is different. And even as much as I breathe life into NPCs, he has this skill that is unmatched. I haven't seen it. Maybe Matt can pull it off occasionally, but if you put 3 NPCs in a room who have to have an argument with each other, which is very hard to do as a DM, they don't need different voices, but what they do need is 3 completely different points of view to have an argument.
Right.
And what he is particularly good at is being able to do that. Yeah. And I've asked him, how do you do that? Because it's so easy for him to do that. And he says, well, each of them have an agenda that they're fighting for. And each of them have these beliefs that they're using as a foundation. And I've tried very hard to bring that in. It's just so hard to take my own personality out of it.
Yeah,
I mean, my how many times has the group said, "Oh, it's a Bill NPC," because it's my creation. It has too much of me in it, and that's my biggest challenge.
But I don't know how often I say it, because I think they just say it because they don't like the fact that the NPC is interfering with what they want to do.
Correct.
That's really
correct.
They don't like to be called out on their BS.
Correct. They don't.
I don't mind being called. I do at the time, but I usually, in reflection, don't mind being. But I'm sorry. We can't. You didn't. I told you what I thought
my biggest challenge.
Challenge. Yeah. You didn't say your biggest.
I would say there are 2 parts of my biggest challenge, and one of them, and both of them I improve on. One is it's so easy as a DM to fall into a me versus them type of position, and I certainly have done that more in the past than now, where you've got these plans, you've got this monster, it's supposed to be really difficult, this encounter is supposed to be hard, and they cheese it instantly and kill the big bad guy, and really that's not their fault, that's your fault as a DM.
Yeah.
Also, as we talked about rules, sometimes I will let the rules interfere with fun. My kid and a lot of people out there have what they call the rule of cool, right? If what the player is doing is cool, then maybe you should let them do it. It's probably not going to break the game. I've learned some of that. I get too bogged down into you can't do that because the rules say you can't do that. And it becomes, and then complain when people play it as a board game. So that's probably one of my biggest challenges. The other one I would say has always been and this is game management, and it's harder when you have more players. 4 players is a great number, right?
Yeah,
I would really encourage DMs to try to stay to 4, maybe 5. But when you have 6 or 7 or 8, time management becomes an issue at that point, and you need to let as a DM, you need to make sure that everybody at the table has a voice. And you need to make sure that when you walk into a room and you go, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? That when they answer you, you clock it so you don't forget what they said, or you don't brush over them, or you don't move forward without taking into account everybody who's doing things in the group. And I've certainly done that in the past. And that has, I've gotten better with that, I think, just in trying to manage. I've had some long conversations with some of the players that help me overcome that. Yeah. But it's a challenge. It's tough. But really, the rules thing is probably my biggest challenge that I try to fight with, and I'm doing much better at that. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, I try. Because
as a player too, by the way.
Yeah. He has a history of kneecapping me on with rules when we're on the same side. We're both players in a game, and he's kneecapping me. So, but I agree with that. When you start having more and more players, it gets harder and harder to. And as a player, it's tough. I will say, although. Another really fun character was created in a large game. We ran a few years back. You ran what was that module? It was a dragon module. I forget what it's called again. That dragon module that you ran.
You're talking about the one with Tiamat?
Tiamat,
yeah. Tiamat, that one.
Yeah.
By the way, we'll do reviews on modules later. That
Yeah,
one was a very difficult one to run, and it needed a lot more help from me than I gave it. Let's put it that way. But there were some really badass encounters I pulled out of it that had nothing to do with the module, by the way.
But I was going to say that campaign we ran, it was a fun campaign overall. But I think there was 8 of us.
There were 8 of you. Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, for our first, when we were creating our characters, I didn't really know what I didn't have a character in mind. So I started listening, and I said, okay, this guy's going to be a fighter. This guy's going to be a spellcast, blah, 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 blah. And I said, the funny thing is, I said, oh, I'll be a rogue. Nobody's been a rogue. We need somebody who can pick up. By the way, I want to say when we started this, it was just at 5, actually. It must have been longer than a few years ago, actually, because just 5 came. Because I think this is the first character we created in 5. We converted.
No, it was the first time we used 5th edition.
Yeah, we converted to 5th edition on a different campaign.
Correct, but that was the first time we used 5th edition. Because I hadn't played a lot of D&D before that. We'd taken a break for a while, and when I wanted to get back into it, I think what inspired me to pick up the mantle again and actually start playing, because you take breaks, right? Your friends do other things, you play other games, whatever the case may be. But I think 5th edition really prompted me to pick it up again and run with it when I started looking into it. First of all, yes, Critical Role kind of inspired me to get back into it again and go, wow, okay, I remember what this was like. And also, 5th edition I thought was pretty well put together. They fixed a lot of the issues, and everyone's going to say there are different things about Dungeons and Dragons, right? And Wizards of the Coast in particular. But for those folks, I will remind you that TSR, and for that matter, Gary Gygax, who we all credit with really bringing this thing forward, also did some things that players did not like. From a business standpoint, from a production standpoint, from all these different arguments that we lay on Wizards of the Coast, which is Hasbro. And I'll say that, you've got to be patient with it. Yes, they're going to sell books. Yes, they're going to make more books. Yes, there's going to be new expansions. Yes, we're going to go from 5th to 5.5. But I'll tell you that 5th lasted a long time, and it is the 5th edition, right? So for those of us who've been playing for 40 years, I have a lot of old D&D books which are gone to the wayside.
Yeah.
And there are DMs out there who I guarantee are still playing 2.5, 2nd edition, 3rd edition. And if that's what you and your players like, by all means, play what you want to play. But I like 5th edition, so we play.
Yeah, and especially something like
but
the single greatest
everybody.
The single greatest example of it could be worse. When they had THACO, 2-hit armor class 0. That was just brilliant plan. It was so stupid.
And you had armor class. The best armor class was negative 10. Yes.
Yeah. It was so weird. You had to do this math. I was so dumb. It was just dumb. But anyways,
it was what it was, right?
We played it. It's what we knew, and we just played it. It wasn't as obvious then how dumb it was until we started playing differently, and then went, this is a better idea.
And now here's the other one, right? Okay, so if you remember old style, right? And we're going to talk about house rules. Let's get into house rules for just a wee moment here. Yeah. So we've all had house rules, and for me, when I started playing, we had a merge of systems, right? I played with a little bit of D&D, which would have been 2nd edition at the time, and advanced D&D, when I was at the heart of my real DMing stuff. But we also had Arduin running around, which is a very small little system that probably no one's ever heard of today.
I didn't hear about it until I met you. So.
Yeah. I still have
the
original.
actually.
I still have the original Arduin Grimoire. Arduin came out about the same time as Basic D&D, and honestly, it is a completely different set of rules, but it had some really terrific stuff in it. It had some really great magic items in it. It had this concept of plus damage versus plus to hit, which I thought was cool. But really what we brought into it was it had crit tables and fumble tables, which were awesome, by the way, to play with. Very dangerous to play with crit tables because, sever your head. It's instant kill sometimes for both the players. It's bad.
It can be fun, but
it can be fun. So
but the problem with those things is as it became relevant, is it's more likely going to happen to you than for you to do it to them.
That's absolutely true, and
That's
nothing will
true.
kill a
It's
game
just
faster
because
than having
it's
your
just
head
how
lopped off.
often
Yeah.
you're rolling versus how often the NPC's rolling.
Correct. And also, the other thing that we played with was Arduin had these special abilities
Yeah,
that you could get at level 1, and those were fun to play
We
with.
still reference them. Like there was one of them I remember. It's called Bumper Direction. It's just
Yeah.
that you had a bump. And you always knew where north was. I think.
Yeah.
And
It became a feat later, I think, in D&D.
Yeah, you always knew where north was, and I think
Even
you always.
underground.
Yeah, even underground. And I thought there was something else. Like you also. I could know the time. I don't know something else.
Yes.
But yeah. Cool little things.
Born
like
up in
that.
a freak, remember, resistant to fire. Anyway, all these kind of weird.
Yeah, the best one was True Sight though, because we played a game where you're born True. That's, by the way, super OP.
Yes.
But I played a character. It was just so.
And so we always had, and not only did we do one, but we did two. But we were just, which creates a bit of an anarchy. If you are a guy who likes the wand of wonders, it's definitely the way to go.
Or the deck of many things.
So before we've been kind of all over the map here, and I get that. But before we go, one of the things I'd like to ask you is walk me through prep, right? You know you've got a game tomorrow that you're going to run. Is there prep before you sit down at the table with your players, or no?
Yes and no. My biggest, I guess that's probably one of my biggest issues as a player, as a DM, is a lot of times I think about prep more than I actually prep. I will. I'll be thinking, oh, I gotta do that. And what I tend to do is I tend to think about, like, if I know, for example, our first game, they're gonna meet. Let's say they meet in a traditional. They're gonna meet in a tavern. I will think about how that interact. I'll be thinking of that heavy. Like, how's that first? Almost from where I was going to say, like for you, I think you a lot of time run a game as a director.
I was going to say, let's talk about that specifically when we talk about prep, right? First game, right? Not game zero, right. which if you have experienced players, you don't really need to get into what a game zero is, but that's really an opportunity to sit down and talk to your players about what you're going to do, set some boundaries, things like that. But we don't have that problem as much. But let's talk about game one, right? I mean, you've got these characters, right? What level are you going to start them at? Yeah. Right? First, second, third, fifth, higher. And typically, how do you like to bring them together? Because you got to bring these guys together. How are you going to do that? What's your favorite?
A lot of times, that's how I... sometimes I have a hook is that meeting. Like I like to try. I don't have a problem with them saying, "Hey, let's go adventure together." A lot of times I try to, but I will sometimes thrust them together in weird ways. I had one which you could call the Ring Campaign.
Oh, I love that. I remember that.
And really what it was is they're all living in a small town, and they're all just doing their thing. And it was heavy rain. It had been raining for a long time. This area rains a lot. It's muddy. And they were just walking down the street, and there was a ring, several of them, actually one for each player, just sitting on the mud. Yeah, just sitting on, and it was just barely touching mud. It was resting. It was clean, but it was resting on the mud. And they picked it up, and each ring had basically transformed them into a first level whatever fighter, whatever stuff like that was kind of murder. And because I like to powerful stuff, it gave them advantageous stuff for that. So whatever their so as a fighter, it gave him stuff to help him as a fighter, stuff. But it was really powerful, and that started and they found the rings, and then they started saying, "Hey, we found these rings." And the funny thing is, everybody they talk to says, "What ring?" And it's like the ring hid itself from anybody else. Yeah, that's the logic I used. But that's how I brought them together. But they all knew that each other had the ring, so they were connected, and there was interest. And then right after they got that shit happened, they didn't have time to really delve into what the rings were, what they are. Just shit started happening, and they started dealing with it. and then it just led off to what the game became. So sometimes I like to do really extravagant things. Sometimes it's just I put them all in a tavern. Like we had another game, me and you co-ran, and they all met at a tavern, and it turned out that they all had an invitation to go to the same place.
Oh, yep. Yep.
And that's it. And then they just got pulled in and they went to this strange town. I don't, in the same way that Strahd campaign is a strange town. It was strange like that in a very general sense. It wasn't undead or anything like that. But it wasn't based on Strahd. But in the way that you go to Bavaria. You go to Bavaria and this strange things happen. They went to this town and strange things are happening, but very different strange things. And so I do like that sometimes too. That's kind of it. How about you? What do you?
Well, I'm gonna answer the first question we started with, and then I'm gonna move on. And very briefly, when I talk about tomorrow, I have a game. Am I gonna prep? I will look at very briefly. I will try to spend in the day before or even the morning of. Try to spend some time looking over if I have material or if I know what they're going to be facing. Kind of going over it in my head so I have an understanding of it. Because nothing sucks more or breaks the momentum of a game more than your DM having to go back and go, oh, I'm sorry, wait, what was that? And try to figure out where everybody is. You should have that stuff kind of on your head. And kind of an idea of where they're going to go. And I like to have, if I'm going to have printouts, handouts, whatever I'm doing, I like to have those printed.
Yeah.
I will sometimes write some things up for notes for myself. I started doing some pre-notes just so I kind of block out stupid crap sometimes, just like the weather or things like that. Because invariably you can have a player who wants to know what the weather is or who wants to know what the weather is tomorrow. Take Druidcraft away from your players. Yeah. It's annoying as a DM in general. I want to know what the weather is for the next 24 hours. Okay. Yeah. Sure you do. All right. It's going to be, it's going to be 74 degrees and sunny. This is Pleasantville. But anyway, the idea is that's most of it. But I have to tell you, the number of times I have just jumped into a game, and I don't mean first session, I mean any given session after, with zero prep, right? Just on the fly, sit down, let's go, is too many to count. And that is because, as you pointed out, I can go on the fly pretty well. And I've leaned on that a lot. So boy, when it fails spectacularly. But yeah, I go on the fly well. But when it comes to starting a game, that is my favorite part. And I will always, almost without exception, I love starting at first level. I love the beginning experience for a character. I love watching a player decide how they're going to be born from whatever life they've lived into a life of this new adventure or whatever they're going. And I've had as many different games as I've run, I've almost had different starting scenarios. The ring scenarios was a great scenario for you. But I've run a lot of games, and they've almost all started differently. And they've all been very background heavy. I love a good I love when a character gives me a good backstory. I think this was born out of Harn. In Harn, you had, if you remember correctly, you role played your backstory.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was a one-on-one, the DM and the player, and it's like, hey, you've come from this background, you're a farmer, you're 12 years old, dad wants you to stay on the farm, you don't, what are you gonna do? And you literally start role-playing their progression into whatever it is that they're going to try to do in their life. And so you're really making them think about it when they're young, whether they want to apprentice or whatever. And you role play that out. You basically role play out the backstory. And that really got me into doing that to the point where I like backstories. I don't, if all you want to give me is this is my mom, this is my dad, and I'm a first level fighter. Okay. And this is my background, because D&D now has backgrounds, right? Yeah. And I'm a scribe.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take that and expand upon it for my purpose as a DM, because I like like in day-to-day life, we all have family. They all interfere with our lives. They all are part of our lives. I want, in part of my living world, I want your player's connection to the world to be that. If you remember how Giants started, right? Everybody was mostly on their own, and they just happened to be at
they're going to the same place, and
for different reasons.
And then we had to.
And then you guys found crap. I would say, I'm sure you would agree, some of the favorite starting things I had. Strahd was fantastic. I really enjoyed Strahd. That was very different because I wrote the backstories, which had varied success. I really liked the prep for that game, but it died too soon.
Yeah.
But then there was probably the greatest start of any game we've ever done, which was our you wake up in a room, not remembering who you are game that we co-ran. Modern game.
We've done I've done it a few. We've done a few different variants of this.
But
we call them the amnesia game. They all wake up and they're in there somewhere. It's the first place they had. They woke up and they were in a hospital ward, but like a psych ward kind of place. And they're like, "What the hell?" And they're stuff. They had to get out of their beds.
Yeah.
And then they had to get out.
That was our first one, right?
Yeah, the first one.
That was the first one.
And it was. We did it crazy. This is very kind of. It was a modern game, very over the top in many ways, and we created some really interesting. And they had to figure out, and sometimes they couldn't figure out right away why they could do stuff. And what we did do, so in that game, which was funny, explain what is. We said you're not gonna know what you are. What we want is suggestions for types of characters.
This is great.
The best one, though. And we got all kinds. And they were great. They
wrote them down.
They wrote it down on a piece of paper like you would charades. They wrote it on a piece of paper, throw it in a hat kind of thing.
And they came up with different ideas.
And we got one from one of the guys, but his handwriting wasn't great. And what he wrote was Hitman. Hitman.
Assassin. No, assassin. Corporate cleaner.
That's it. Assassin, corporate cleaner. That's what he wrote.
Right.
And it looked to us like
assassin, carpet cleaner. So that's what we created.
That's what we thought he wrote, and we thought it was hysterical. But this guy was like, yeah. So and we confused the hell out of him because we point out. We put great length. Every time we saw carpet, you go, "Oh yeah, that'll take a long time to get blood out of that," and stuff like that. And that was a great.
Yeah, amnesia games are great. We just created characters and literally handed them out. I've
done that a few times. I did another game like that, but it was more. That was jump up again. A really good one I just remembered that I did is I had them all create high-level characters. I want to say they might have been 20th level characters, some ridiculous level, by the way. And I told them, you each start with 100,000 gold worth of magic items, whatever you want. And they created the most ridiculous things. And all I did was, all right, you don't want to do, bam, a bunch of dragons are attacking the boat you're on. What are you doing? They're all going crazy. And it's just ridiculous chaos and stuff. And then everything stopped. I said, everything comes to complete stop. Even the rain, the drops of rain is just hanging there. And all of a sudden, this red light letters appear. And it says, game over. And they wake up and they're all in a virtual reality game. And I hand out the actual characters of the modern game. They were just playing a video game to start with. But I threw them all
That's actually kind of neat.
And that was a lot of fun.
So I think we need to talk, we need to not go for
we could problem is you can see we have a hard time.
I think maybe next episode let's talk about rules a little bit.
Talk about,
and by that I mean rule systems, right? What we like, what we dislike.
Yeah. What's good about one system.
And when as a DM you should think about breaking from the rules a little bit and stuff like that. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
And as we've talked about before, we will at some. We're trying to get some of our friends to come on and talk about these subjects. They're a little reluctant, but we'll see.
There are players, so that should be really good.
Yeah. So then you'll get to.
But anyway, again, as before, if you like this, please feel free to click subscribe. It doesn't cost anything, and also if you have comments, questions, things
comments,
you want to say,
if you think if we missed something, or if we said something, you want more clarity on that.
Or you just want us
Or you
to,
want to just say, hey, I remember that. I had that problem too.
or hey, you know what? We're 40-year DMs who are 60 years old ish. If you want some suggestions, pointers, tips, whatever, please don't hesitate. Please let's know.
We'll talk about that stuff. All right.
But thank you for watching, and Bill for old nerds.
Another Bill for old nerds, and till next time.
See you guys later. Till next time.